Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Saudi Arabia for talks with the king and the crown prince. This comes as sources tell CNN that Saudi Arabia is preparing to admit the journalist Jamal Khashoggi died inside their consulate in Istanbul, but they say it was during an interrogation gone wrong. Joining us now to talk about this and more, we have Republican Senator Marco Rubio. He's a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
So if this comes to pass, if in fact the Saudis prepare a statement and they say that Jamal Khashoggi was the victim of an interrogation gone wrong, gone too far, would you believe that explanation?
Where's the body? Why wasn't the family notified? Why have they spent the better part of 8 or 9 days saying they didn't know anything about it? And there's all other things that didn't happen here. So, why'd you send 18 people, or whatever it was, to fly into Turkey and immediately leave afterwards? And those are the other questions they're going to be asked. Like, this is a catastrophe for them. And this is a fear we've had for a long time, is that the Crown Prince is a young and an aggressive guy that would overestimate how much room he had to do things, would get over-aggressive, would overestimate his own capabilities and create a problem such as this. So, look, Saudi Arabia was a big part of this Middle Eastern strategy that the administration has, which was generally a good idea, and that is to try to hedge against Iran's ambitions in the region. The risk in that was always that this guy was reckless. And we've seen a little bit of that in some other places, but now, we saw that dust up, for example, in Lebanon, where the prime minister is basically abducted for a week or whatever. But now this would really blow apart our Middle Eastern strategy. And it's something we have to address from a human rights standpoint. Just because a country we're working with did it doesn't mean the U.S. can just shrug its shoulder and say, well, nothing happened here.
Yeah, Senator, you're asking all of the right questions, and you're asking the questions that I think that Americans would hope that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is posing to the Crown Prince right now, and that President Trump would have posed to the king when he spoke to him on the phone. But instead, it sounds like President Trump just accepted the king's denial, I guess, that he knew nothing. President Trump came up with a curious explanation for what might have happened in there. Here's how he explained his thinking now.
The king firmly denied any knowledge of it. He didn't really know. Maybe, I don't want to get into his mind, but it sounded to me like maybe these could have been rogue killers. Who knows?
Senator, I don't know if you could hear that. The audio wasn't great, but he said it sounded to me like maybe it could have been rogue killers. Well, who knows? What do we do with that?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to understand the way the president expresses himself. I've now been around him, both running as a candidate and now that he's been president for almost 2 years. I think he's just relaying back what he heard in the conversation and talking almost colloquially about it. He's not talking like a member of the Foreign Relations Committee or the Council of Foreign Relations, because he's not a politician. He's a businessman. He's just talking like a regular person and sort of relaying back what he heard. Ultimately, what's going to matter here is what they do about it. And there's going to be strong measures. The president has said that. If this is true, there'll be strong measures. I can tell you that a separate branch of government that I belong to, the Senate, Congress, I believe will act in a bipartisan way. And this is going to alter the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia for the foreseeable future. What those specific measures are, obviously, is going to be up for debate, but they'll be strong and they'll be meaningful. Congress will act. We'll see what the administration does. It sounds to me like in the end of the day, they will also follow suit.
In terms of those strong measures, just one more question, and that is, look, you have pointed out that this is bigger than arms sales. The president seems fixated on what he says is $110 billion worth of arms sales to Saudi Arabia. He wants to keep that intact. You've pointed out that it's bigger than that, and that Saudi Arabia is key to our Middle East strategy. They act as a hedge against Iranian influence in the region. So is one journalist's gruesome murder enough to blow all of that up?
Well, I can tell you that human rights is worth blowing that up, and luring someone into a consulate where they're thereby murdered, dismembered, and disposed of is a big deal. By the way, this happens to be a green card holder of the United States and who have been a journalist, but he could have been, a maintenance worker at the Washington Post. It wouldn't have mattered. It's a human being whose life was taken by a direct act of a foreign government by luring him into a diplomatic facility in a third country. Any one of those factors is bad. Put them all together, and it's catastrophic. And as far as arms sales are concerned, it's not the money. You know, there are other countries we could sell that to, imports. It's just not the money. The arms sales does give us leverage over a country. When they have our weapon systems, they need our maintenance, they need our replacement equipment and the like, and it gives us leverage over their behavior. You know, that's why we're talking about arms sales now, because it's leverage. But they'll buy those weapons from someone else. But I don't care how much money it is. There isn't enough money in the world to purchase back our credibility on human rights and the way nations should conduct themselves. And we lose our credibility and our moral standing to criticize Putin for murdering people, Assad for murdering people, Maduro in Venezuela for murdering people. We can't say anything about that if we allow Saudi Arabia to do it, and all we do is a diplomatic slap on the wrist.